The teacher threw a ruler at a student's back. The student spat out a cheat note from his mouth. He lifted the skirt of a hottie. Her thighs were covered in cheat answers. Then he reached out to a boy. The boy quickly handed over his phone. The teacher warned them cheating was impossible. Daniel stared at the test paper in distress. He couldn't solve a single question. A handsome guy passed him answers using a bee, but the teacher slapped the bee dead. A hottie remotely controlled Daniel's pen to answer. Daniel immediately gripped the pen to avoid the teacher's notice, but suddenly, the pen ran out of ink. It even poked a hole in the paper. A masked guy moved with incredible speed, and time seemed frozen. He swiftly switched Daniel and another student's paper, then calmly sat back. Daniel happily looked at the paper filled with answers, thinking he would surely score high this time, but he only scored 66 in the end. The guy gently lifted the sole of his shoe, revealing the hidden exam answers inside. Just as he carefully searched through them, the teacher noticed something unusual. Quickly, he put his foot down. No matter how hard the teacher looked, no cheating tools were found. Nearby, another guy tugs at his jacket. The answers on the fabric became visible. However, his movements were too noticeable, grabbing the teacher's attention. Seizing the opportunity, the glasses-wearing boy opened his coat, took out a fake finger, placed it on his hand, and started searching for answers on the fake finger. The teacher suspected him of cheating and asked him to raise his hand, but unbelievably, the teacher didn't notice he had 6 fingers. The guy continued provocatively twisting his hands. Do you think the teacher eventually found out? The hottie gave her watch a little tug and uncovered the hidden answers inside. The teacher, hearing some noise, started searching around. Behind, a girl quickly pulled off her headband to sneak a peek at the answers. A handsome guy by the window, keeping an eye on his watch, seized the moment and slipped his pen into the gadget on his arm. Then the helper could remotely control his arm to write the answers. The teacher walked over and stopped by him, seeing him apparently writing in the air. Suddenly, the helper started shooing away flies, and the guy unintentionally flung his arm. He awkwardly glanced at the teacher, and then the teacher angrily asked him what he was up to. He said his back hurt and he wanted to stand up and stretch. Do you think the teacher believed his explanation? The girl had the most advanced cheating glasses in the world. It could shoot tiny robots at the top student and transmit the answers back. But before she could copy it, the robot was smashed by the top student. So she launched 2 more robots. They annoy the top student. He used a ruler to hit the robots. Accidentally, he smashed the invigilator's glasses. In the end, the girl succeeded in getting 100 points, but the teacher wanted to see her glasses.
I want to take a look at those glasses.
The girl took off her glasses, threw them at the teacher. In the explosion, she kept her secret safe. The students were all shocked when the prank failed. The new teacher was starting his first day, but the students were busy with their stuff, like cooking, playing games, and even sleeping. The teacher wrote his name on the board, introduced himself, but still got no response. He grabbed a rubber band and chalk, aiming at the sprinkler. Suddenly, the classroom was wet and pouring rain, but the teacher had prepared an umbrella to protect himself. Now all the classmates were looking at him. Then the teacher held a cigarette and said, if anyone could answer 3 questions, they could have the day off. One student answered correctly. He, strumming his guitar, happily left. The rest of the class, jealous, eagerly raised their hands to answer questions. The flour container fell, but the teacher was well prepared. Looking at the student covered in flour, the teacher pretended to be surprised, but just as he turned around, students held a confetti cannon, scaring him almost out of the classroom. But their showdown had just begun. The teacher sat down to start the class, only to discover strong glue on the chair. As the students chuckled, the teacher started taking off his pants, startling the students who quickly covered their eyes. Turns out, he was wearing 2 pairs of pants. When he reached into the lectern, he found a big mouse inside. Fearfully, he tossed the mouse to the students, but they laughed, saying the mouse was fake. Then the teacher pulled out another mouse. Turns out, the live mouse had been swapped earlier. The teacher is captivated by the girl's legs. Behind her, a guy seizes the opportunity to stand up and strips off his clothes. He proudly displays the cheat notes covering his body for all to see. The entire class starts furiously copying, some even using both hands. Some even print the answers onto wood to create makeshift pencils. While the teacher's distracted for a second, a girl folds the test into a paper plane and throws it out the window. Downstairs, an accomplice catches it, writes the answers on balloons, and floats them up. Outside, several female students use their bodies to display the answers. A guy even holds a gun to see the test questions, and then projects the answers with infrared rays. Then all the students start copying furiously. The teacher senses the students are cheating, but finds nothing. If you were a teacher, how would you catch students cheating? To figure out what 1/2 plus 1/2 equals, the man took out a calculator, cut it in half, threw away 1/2, then took out another calculator, cut it again. He took out some tape, stuck the 2 half calculators together. Sure enough, resulted in 1 calculator. Next, what is 3 minus 1? The man opened a drawer, took out a calculator, then took out 2 more. After confirming he had 3, the man took out a hammer, smashed 1 calculator. Finally, he knew the answer. So, what does 4 asterisk 2 equal? He stretched out 2 fingers on his left hand, 2 on his right, lightly touched his 2 hands together. They became 4. Next, he counted 4 plus 4 by extending 4 fingers on each hand, then touching them together. The fingers moved to 1 hand, but how could he restore them? With a gentle clap of his hands, the table transformed into building blocks. Moving behind his colleague, he extended a finger and tapped the chair, instantly turning it into blocks, causing his coworker to crash heavily to the ground. Just a while ago, he bit into a sweet potato fry only to discover it caught in his teeth. The fry morphed into building blocks, prompting him to quickly sip a coffee. Unexpectedly, the cup suffered the same fate, a light touch, and the table became blocks again. They were ecstatic, turning a directional sign into blocks with a casual swipe, and playfully kicking a sign into powder. A press against the boss's car, and it transformed into a toy in an instant. Excitedly, they raised their hands for a celebratory high five, but to their surprise, his friend also turned into blocks, crashing to the ground in a pile of pieces. With a gentle clap of his hands, the table transformed into building blocks. Moving behind his colleague, he extended a finger and tapped the chair, instantly turning it into blocks, causing his coworker to crash heavily to the ground. Just a while ago, he bit into a sweet potato fry only to discover it caught in his teeth. The fry morphed into building blocks, prompting him to quickly sip a coffee. Unexpectedly, the cup suffered the same fate, a light touch, and the table became blocks again. They were ecstatic, turning a directional sign into blocks with a casual swipe, and playfully kicking a sign into powder. A press against the boss's car, and it transformed into a toy in an instant. Excitedly, they raised their hands for a celebratory high five, but to their surprise, his friend also turned into blocks, crashing to the ground in a pile of pieces. A hapless man lay there, looking like a human pincushion, his body adorned with acupuncture needles like a bizarre porcupine cosplay. As his physician bid him farewell, next moment the fire alarm erupted into a wild cacophony, as if it were part of a comedy soundtrack. Ignoring the agony, he struggled to get out of bed, knowing he had to evacuate ASAP. With one hand clutching his trousers and the other carefully holding his needle-spiked rear, he waddled toward the outside. People outside couldn't believe their eyes, pointing at him like he was the star of a slapstick show. He quickly wrapped his pants around himself, only to turn around and find the doctor grinning like a Cheshire cat. With a sigh and a shrug, he decided to ask the doc for help, but just as he was about to make his move, someone yelled that the fire drill had concluded. The female physician strolled off with an amused smirk. Safely inside the elevator, he heaved a sigh of relief, believing his hilarious ordeal was finally over. But just then, squeezing him into a human burrito,